Hello everybody, welcome to this video. Before we talk about the different components of the Mindizor project, and we just want to explore something very important, and you're not going to find this in any of the courses here on YouTube or any other place, because this is how we design the Mindizor project based on the object motor behavior life cycle inside of Unity. So basically we started with iter, and then we go to the initialization phase. So what do we mean by iter? Iter is just basically the Unity editor that you can see here. So we have all these, we have this window, for example, and you got some menus here. So all these are considered as editor. So for example, if you create a new object here and just go here and call this function, we have a function here called reset. So once you call this function, you're just gonna call the first function here called reset, and this reset is called in the editor when the script is attached or reset. So once you have a script, and what do you mean by script? Just a component. Like you come here into the Soomla initializer, for example, you're gonna see we have a script. So once the script is attached, we just gonna call this method, and this method here is reset. So this is the first thing is called inside of Unity, but we're not gonna focus on this right now because we want to talk about initialization. And we use iter. We use iter here in Unity because, for example, you gotta have here, we have Mindizor, for example, we got window, we got here Soomla. All these are defined here inside iter. We have iter, we have an editor class for each of these menu items for it. We have different implementations here, but don't worry about this. This is not the core thing that we want to focus about here. We just want to focus about the important thing, which is initialization. So in the initialization, we call first awake method, and after that we just call a method called enable, and after that we just call another method called start. So there's a flow, and the flow that we have here, we just get started from the top to the bottom. So here we, inside the initialization first phase, we start from awake method here, and then we move on to enable method, and after that we just move on to start method. And after that we're just gonna execute the fixed update method here, and we have other methods here, but they are related to physics. So we're not gonna work with physics right now, so we're just gonna move all the way down to update method. So basically, let's just see this. We go from start all the way to the update method here. All right, so on update method, we do the game logic, and inside this update method, we can take the input from the user. We can do many things, the game logic of the game, like you're just gonna capture, for example, the raycast, anything else related to that you can use inside the update. Anything related to physics, you can use the fixed update, and this is just a general concept inside gaming in Unity. Also here we have a call for coroutines, like we have yield null, we have yield 4 seconds, we have yield in case you want to call a web request, HTTP request. You're just gonna choose www. We have start coroutine. Don't worry about this right now. All right, don't worry about this. We have here an internal animation update. Also, it's just here because we call the animation birth frame, and we have another method here called late update, which is executed after we execute the update method. So all these methods are inside the motor behavior, and after that we have other things related to scene rendering. We have gizmo rendering, we have GUI rendering, end of frame, and we have pausing. And you can see here we have something called on application pause, and when we call this on application pause method, we're just gonna go all the way back. As you can see here, you go on application pause, you go all the way to here, and when you go on, we have another method here called on disable. So we have another method, let me just here, called on disable, and once we call on disable, you can go all back, you go to on enable, and just gonna get started with the start. So you can notice here that awake method is called every time we the first time we initialize the scene, we're just gonna call the awake method, and after that we're just gonna call the onEnable onStart. So all the time when you call onDisable, you're just gonna go all the way back to onEnable and then onStart. So why I'm explaining this for you, because you have to understand the basic concept behind initialization and the mono behavior in Unity, because it's very important in order to understand how the Mindizor project works. Because every time, if you don't call the onDisable function, we're just gonna go all the way to onDestroy, and after that onApplicationQuit, and this is called as decomposition or decommission. So in decommission phase, we destroy the object, and after that we destroy the whole thing on application quit. So all the objects gonna be destroyed inside on application quit, or can be destroyed manually using the onDestroy method. But most of the case, the main thing that we work on inside the Mindizor project, we use these functions. We work with these functions here: onAwake, onEnable, onStart, and also we work with the function here called onDisable. Alright, so why we use this and what is the main purpose behind this? Let's just take a scenario trying to explain to you why and what do we need with this workflow. So basically, we have a common scenario that when you have two scenes, so we have a scene 1 here and we have a scene 2, and let's say when you initialize this scene, you're just gonna have an object here, and this object is gonna be black, and we have another object here. All right, and this, let's say, object gonna be also red. All right, and let's say we just gonna go from this scene into this scene. All right, once you go from this scene into this scene, what will happen there? You're just gonna exit this scene. So once you exit this scene, you're just gonna destroy all the things inside this scene, because we're gonna load them. We're gonna load another scene here. So that this means we're just gonna start with a new scene, with a new empty scene here. All right, it's a different scene. So let's say here we have scene number 1, and here we have scene 2. And let's say we just want to move from this scene to this scene. So what's gonna happen there? Once we start this scene, we're just gonna call the awake method. All right, and we're just gonna call the onEnable method, onEnable, and we're just gonna call start method. All right, but once we move from this scene to this scene, we're just gonna call another thing. We're just gonna call onEnable, onDisable. Once we move here, we're just gonna call onDisable. All right, and we're just gonna move on to the other scene, and we're just gonna destroy all the objects from here because we call onDisable, and after that we're just gonna call onDestroy and so forth. So what happens when you go to this scene? We're just gonna call the same thing. We're just gonna call awake method, we're just gonna call onEnable, and we're just gonna call start method. All right, and in case you're just gonna create a new if you have, for example, this, if you need to create this black box, let's say it's B1. So once you move in from here, all the way to here, let's go here. So once you move all the way from here to here, you're just gonna have B1, but with a different instance. So let's say this is B11, for example, and this is gonna be another thing. That's gonna be, for example, B2. Even it's the same object, but it's a different instance. So we're just gonna initialize it again. So this is gonna be B2. So if I say to you, no, we need to make something not related. We need to make this object remains the same across the entire scenes. So you cannot achieve this normally. You have to use something called singleton. And what do we mean by singleton? Singleton is used to avoid this problem, to just have one instance. So once this is created, when I move to another scene, I'm not gonna create this object again. So generally, when you work with normal classes, you're not gonna implement this. So we have to use something called singleton class. So what do we mean by singleton class, and how to achieve singleton class, and what is the main purpose behind singleton class? We're just gonna find out in the next video. Thank you guys again for watching.